Hi, I'm Ian Small, CEO of Evernote, and welcome back behind the scenes. In our last episode, we looked deep inside the cloud at some of the things we're doing to improve the fundamental architecture and infrastructure that we're using. Today, we're going to do the same thing with the client, where we're making fundamental changes in how we build our software. I'm here with Mike, who's a senior member of the engineering team that's undertaking that project. So Mike, why don't you tell us about some of the challenges you're taking on?
So right now, we have 5 clients running 5 completely different code bases.
So there's almost no shared code.
No shared code between them.
What kind of problems does that introduce?
What happens is that as these products evolve, they all sort of start to evolve separately. And they've all been written in different languages by different engineers, by different teams, and have approached challenges that are somewhat the same, but solve them subtly differently.
So what you're saying is the way I might see something sync on my iPhone might be subtly different than the way I see it sync on my Windows machine.
Exactly. And if you are on multiple devices, you've probably noticed some of these inconsistencies.
Okay, so that makes sense. How are we going to tackle fixing that?
So that's where Conduit comes in.
What's Conduit?
Conduit is our single code library that will run on all of our platforms to manage the data coming from our Evernote cloud.
So Conduit's not a new product, it's an internal project.
Exactly. Each client will implement Conduit as part of its data backend.
What is it responsible for?
Conduit will be responsible for grabbing all your data from the cloud, so that's your notes, your notebooks, and things like that, storing that into local storage, retrieving it when the UI wants to show it, as well as making the changes that the UI requests and sending that back into the cloud, all in one consistent manner across all the platforms.
So if the UI then is responsible essentially for all the buttons that I see and the editor and changes like that I make, whenever I change a piece of data, whether it's which note is in which notebook or the content of a note, it's Conduit that's responsible for actually making sure we save that.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. What are some of the advantages of taking an approach like Conduit?
The major advantage here is that we have a consistent way of managing our data. All of the clients will interact with the cloud exactly the same, and there should be no differences between upsync and downsync between different clients. Okay,
well, I know it used to be a problem over here with this approach because often when a user reported a bug to us, we have to backtrack through what device they used last and what sequence of devices because we have to look at where did the bug happen. Was it in their iPhone? Was it on the Windows desktop? Was it on the web browser? Because they're all a little different. With Conduit, does that become simpler?
Yeah, it's much more consistent, and we can rely on Conduit to be the source of truth for all of this data. Any bugs that we do have will show up solely in Conduit, and we'll know where it happens, and there'll only be one team responsible for actually fixing this and pushing those changes out.
And what about how it helps us in terms of bringing new features to market?
Any new features that we want to develop, we can develop once in Conduit to manage the data from the cloud, and then our UI teams can focus on what they do best, which is making a good user experience.
Whereas over here, we build it 5 times, basically top to bottom.
Exactly.
All right. So that all sounds pretty good, but I can imagine there are some challenges because, I know my iPhone is a pretty different device from my Windows desktop.
That's actually what makes Conduit such an ambitious project. Your mobile devices, for example, will have significantly less storage than, say, your desktop devices. Conduit has to take this into account when it does any changes.
So Conduit is basically a single code library, but it has to be optimized for each of these devices.
Right.
So talk to me a little bit about when our users can actually expect to see a Conduit-backed client, an app, in their own hands.
So right now, we actually have Conduit running on Chrome for a subset of our users. We have a preview that's currently running for some of our users as well in iOS and Android. And we also have a preview that we are working to get ready to release for our desktop clients.
So today, some of our web users who are using Evernote on web are actually using a Conduit-based build.
Exactly.
They just don't know it.
They just don't know it yet.
Okay, well, that's pretty good. Presumably that's one of the goals is they shouldn't know it.
Yep.
But over time, as we get this out into all the clients, our users will experience a more consistent and predictable experience.
Exactly.
Okay, I guess last question, how do you feel about how things are going?
So development has taken a little bit longer than we would have liked. However, we do have to take into account that we have been doing about 12 years of development and compacting that all and rewriting it from scratch and putting it into a single library.
So it's a big lift.
It's a big undertaking.
Especially if you're going to write bug-free code.
Yeah, no bugs every time.
We like bug-free code. So what we've talked about today is something you don't see when you use Evernote. It's the code that lies behind the interface that you touch. But that code is core to delivering a consistent and coherent experience across all the different devices that you use. And our goal here is to create a predictable experience no matter what device you're on. Mike and his team are doing the extremely heavy lift required to actually get that done. and they're making good progress, and we're happy to be actually out in the hands of users with some of the early builds of this. We hope you've enjoyed this episode and that you join us next time, behind the scenes at Evernote.